Welcome back to 4AZ. I'm your host, Tyler McDowell Blanken, and I am pulling double duty on this one. I want to tell you more about my journey. In this episode, you'll hear my story. I'll also reveal the guests for next week's season finale and what's next for 4AZ. First, I need to give a big shout out to my guy, Aaron Gould, for the new logo and art. He's a gifted graphic designer and an even better person. You can connect with him and check out his work on Instagram at Aaron Gould Photo. That's Gould spelled Gould. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe on YouTube and your favorite audio platform of choice. Take a moment to leave a comment or review. It truly goes a long way and helps us reach more people. You can follow us online at 4AZTeach for exclusive updates and clips from the show. Let's start way back. I had several dream jobs. As a kid, I wanted to become a WWE champion and point guard for the Phoenix Suns. I also thought about becoming a barber and fashion entrepreneur. I even considered going to DJ school. An ad ran in every Vibe magazine back in the day. Maybe it was XL. It's definitely one of the two, but I digress. Okay, starting with high school. At that time, I had no thought of becoming a teacher. None whatsoever. I grew up here in Glendale. I went to some really fantastic schools. I had a really great situation throughout childhood when it came to my education, but I never thought of becoming a teacher. I had friends, particularly in high school. I was that guy that was cool with everybody, but now being removed from it years later, I won't reveal how many years, but years later, I didn't feel a sense of community during my K through 12 experience, especially not in high school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had all of these interests, but I wasn't quite sure until junior year, and certainly by senior year. I knew I had much more clarity. I was going to study journalism. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to write for GQ. I thought it would be amazing to be the host of 106 in Park. I grew up in the Terrence and Roxy era. Of course, I had AJ and Free, but during my adolescence, really coming into my own as a teenager, Terrence and Roxy were were the hosts, which I've had a ton of debates about with my friends in terms of who was the best duo. I'm Team Terrence and Roxy, but I have a lot of friends that are AJ and Free, which I'm not too mad at. But I thought GQ, 106, I like sports, I enjoy riding. Let's pursue that route. At that time, high school, all of K through 12, I did not have very many teachers who looked like me. And now I wonder if I had more representation in front of the classroom, perhaps I could have started my journey much sooner. If you would have told me back then that I would become a teacher, education would be my chosen career of choice, I would have told you that's completely preposterous. That would have been like telling me I was going to be an astronaut or something that seems so far out of my depth. Am I smart enough to become a teacher? Do I have the requisite skills to lesson plan? What is a lesson plan? How do you do one of those? I wish I would have had the opportunity to be in those ed professions classes or to just start my journey earlier. But alas, we'll get to why I believe the universe conspires in our favor much later on in the episode. It's one of my favorite books, The Alchemist. If you haven't read it, check it out. So, like I said, journalism was my path. I decided senior year of college that I was going to attend the University of Arizona the following year. I originally had aspirations to attend a historically Black college. I was really about that. That was the mission, that was the vision. But then I discovered how much out-of-state tuition costs. and and I needed to pivot pretty soon after. Now, mind you, my family has always been about supporting my goals and my dreams. I know if I told them, "Hey, I'm going to Morehouse," or "I'm definitely going to be a Hampton Pirate," or "I'm going to cruise on over to Howard for the next 4 years," they would have supported me to the max. But I wasn't ready to leave home. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to Arizona, and it was more cost effective to stay here. I applied to the three state schools, our public universities: Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona State University, ASU, my current employer. We'll talk about them later. And then the aforementioned University of Arizona in Tucson. If you haven't been to Arizona, these universities are in three distinct parts of the state. Northern Arizona, it's kind of in the title, Flagstaff. There's snow. If you're hearing this and you're not from Arizona and you've never been, yes, there is snow in the state. Arizona State University is in Tempe, very close to Phoenix. And then the University of Arizona is in Tucson, southern Arizona, about 2 hours south of Phoenix. I spread my wings and I went to U of A. It was not an easy decision. I narrowed it down between ASU and U of A. ASU has a really well known journalism school, the Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication. It was funny because my dad wanted me to stay locally and go to Cronkite, and my mom wanted me to go to U of A. So this is probably the mama's boy in me. This is now when I confess I'm a mama's boy. My friends are saying, nah, bro, we've known that. I ended up choosing U of A. One of the best decisions I've made ever. It was a fantastic 4 years, and it allowed me to grow in so many ways. So again, in high school, I was yearning for that sense of community, cool with everyone, got solid grades, had some really fantastic teachers, some of whom I still keep in touch with today. But I wanted to go to college and not only grow out of my shell, but find that keyword of community that we've talked about several times over the past 8 episodes here on 4AZ. Went to U of A, obviously lived on campus beginning my freshman year, and that was quite the experience. That was an adventure that I will never forget. I am an only child, so the idea of sharing, sharing space, sharing items was completely foreign to me, but I did that my freshman year. I lived on campus, like I said, with a roommate who I hadn't met before. It was just completely brand new. We were put together. Word to Apache Santa Cruz Residence Hall, in case anyone is a Wildcat out there. And beginning freshman year, I started to find folks with similar interests to me. A lot of fellow students who look like me. U of A has a very strong Black student union. You may recall in Mariah Barnett's episode, way back earlier here on season 1, she referenced the MLK Student Center. I was introduced to that my freshman year and spent many days there, many meetings there. It became, and still really is, an epicenter for just Black talent at the U of A and community, from freshmen all the way through seniors, students who are from Arizona, students who are from California and elsewhere. Everyone converges onto MLK to break bread, to confide in each other through the ups and downs of the collegiate experience. U of A was fantastic. I ended up going into residence life. So at the end of my freshman year, I applied to be a resident assistant. I really, really wanted housing paid for. And I didn't say that in my interview, by the way. I led with, and this is still true, I had a fantastic resident assistant. Shout out to Justin Samuels. He is a Black man. He's a brother. And he really, to go from not having any teachers who look like me to my RA, my assigned mentor from day one, um, being like me and being able to relate to me, it was just a huge game changer. So shout out to Justin if he's hearing this. I wanted to be like him. And sophomore year, I became a resident assistant. That was really my first taste of mentorship, and in many ways, perhaps served as my first a first moment of me considering becoming a teacher. With being an RA, there's much more than people think. It's not, I wouldn't call it an easy job per se. You have to go on duty and supervise the building and make sure residents are okay. You have to walk the perimeter of your building and be up late at night and hold on to a duty phone, which residents could call at any hour of the evening. It's a lot. There's a lot more than meets the eye. You also have to plan events. You have to check in on your residents. I was an RA sophomore and junior year. And each year I had anywhere from 25 to 40 residents, very similar to a class and a roster that you will have. And I really took so much pride in being a mentor and trying to welcome students and create a great experience for them during that incredibly pivotal freshman year of college. I remember folks who I started out school with who didn't necessarily make it to graduation for various reasons. I wanted to make sure the students that I had the chance to be a resident assistant for knew they were supported and valued. And many were not from Arizona. They were going out of state for school. I really took that as a point of pride. Not saying I was perfect by any means, but it was an experience that I'm grateful for, and hopefully contributed to in a positive way. Sophomore year started as an RA, as I mentioned. Junior year, I followed that up. Junior year, I was the resident assistant for a brand new living learning community at UofA. Mariah did mention this. Shout out to her once again, Miss Barnett. The building leaders and creating knowledge living learning community at Navajo Pinal Residence Hall. It's actually a part of the football stadium. I could be a separate tangent. It's a whole thing. That was a wing specifically designed for Black students or students who wanted to learn more about the Black community, were advocates for the Black community. The numbers were interesting. It was originally supposed to be all Black identifying students, but then numbers got mixed and it ended up being much more of a rainbow coalition, which worked out pretty well, as a matter of fact. That was my favorite year of college, bar none. I had an amazing community director, Kim Fossil, the one and only Kim Fossil. And that's when the wheels started turning of this mentorship piece and what this could be, and the idea of being around people who look like me, giving back to our community, learning more about the Black community in Tucson, the history of it, the history in our state. The wheels were really, really spinning. Senior year, let me rewind actually. By this time, journalism, I had an amazing advisor, the one and only Renee Schaefer Horton. I do not believe I would have graduated without that woman. She's a queen. She was just so giving for me. I'll never forget. If she hears this, I wonder if she remembers. I'll never forget. There was one time my sophomore year where I had an advising appointment with her, but I think I must have rescheduled it 3 times simply because I had a situationship. I don't even think my family knows about this. I had a situationship that was just keeping me up at hours of the night, and I was so invested in trying to make it work, and I just couldn't get up in time for my 8 a.m. advising appointment. I could have, but I said no. I need my beauty sleep. I'm not going to do that. I was talking with Shawty. I'll reschedule, and Renee was always so generous and always so caring and just put up with me during a really interesting time, right? It was 19, I was 20. I was just trying to figure out a lot. So Renee was there for me, and I expressed to her sophomore year, definitely by junior year, that journalism just wasn't fulfilling me the way I had hoped, the way that it once did, the way that I wanted it to. It was cool. The classes were varying levels of interesting for me, but by junior year, I had decided I don't think journalism is my desired path anymore. So that's when I heard about Teach for America. Teach for America. What do I want to say? I applied junior year as a part of the early application process. And as part of the application, you select, I believe, 10 cities in which you're interested in serving. I chose Phoenix. Of course, that was at the top of my list. I chose, I think, the Rio Grande Valley. So got some Texas in there. And really West Coast is what I was envisioning. But I also added Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis ended up being the city that I was placed in. Fast forward to senior year, I was still working in housing. Big ups to David Ward. He was our community director that year. I was promoted to being an assistant community director, in which I was able to supervise RAs. I met some dear friends that I still keep in touch with to this day from my time in residence life. I always recommend it to students who are going to college, consider being an RA. It will be a game changer. I gained supervisory experience senior year. I passed my classes. Luckily, I also at that point was finishing my Africana studies and creative writing minor. So not only was it me not feeling fulfilled by completely by journalism and seeing my classmates really enjoying interviewing people and traveling for stories and seeking stories, I just thought, oh, I don't have that passion for it. So while journalism wasn't fulfilling me, Africana studies and creative writing was. And I decided I wanted to be an English teacher from there. I had great English teachers during my high school experience, and I wanted to be like them. I just love embracing stories, I should say. A lot of the English teachers I know, or not a lot, but several, have journalism backgrounds. There's definitely a community of former journalists or aspiring journalists turned English educators. Many high schools here in Arizona have journalism programs. So it was a pretty seamless pivot for me in that regard, fortunately. Applied for Teach for America. I didn't realize there were alternative certification routes I could have done here in the state. I'm totally telling on myself, but I just didn't do enough research. I had no clue there were other options for me where I could have stayed locally. All that being said, I applied for TFA. I was selected for Memphis, Tennessee. Graduated from Arizona. The following few weeks after that summer, just graduated. I was placed in Memphis for I want to say it was a 6 to 7 week boot camp on welcome to Memphis, Tennessee, welcome to the community you're serving, and here's how you become an effective teacher. I was placed with about 30 to 40 other TFA core members in Memphis. Some had just graduated from college. Others were older and had been professionals and were making this transition. It's a really interesting mix of folks. I met some great people in Memphis. I ate some delicious barbecue and really that and TFA, we keep it a stack here. TFA is a polarizing organization. I'll leave it to you to Google if you're not hip to it. It's polarizing. There are some big defenders of TFA and many detractors. I will say that it served me well because I was amongst a super diverse cohort in age and experience, in ethnicity and gender. We were all placed in Memphis, and I was able to learn how to become a teacher with a diverse group of colleagues. It meant a lot to me. I remember us playing basketball in the humid Memphis mornings. I remember living in the dorms at the University of Memphis. I remember summer crushes I had. It still is a blur. That time period is a blur. It was a fun time, and it really was my first foray into the career of education. We student taught at a local, I think it was a charter school back then, Memphis Business Academy, and I was certainly not a good teacher at that time, but I just started learning the tools of the trade. However, I ended up coming back to Arizona after that Memphis training. There was a lot going on personally. Number one, I did not save up enough money for the trip to Memphis. I didn't have the foresight to apply for transitional funds. There were some family health situations going on back here. So I made one of the most difficult decisions in my life up to that point to complete the summer training in Memphis, but I left the job that I had lined up there in the city. I left it all behind to move back to Arizona. I didn't even have a car of my own at that point. So bless my dad, bless my parents, first and foremost. Bless my dad for driving to Memphis to scoop me up. We packed my whole life and belongings into, I think we had a rental car at that time, not a huge rental car either. Drove back to Arizona. And from there, I felt really lost. It was a real struggle because I grew up with this mindset of you graduate high school, you go to college, graduate from college, and then you have the rest of your life figured out. when in reality I had so much more to work through, and I didn't have thought I had an awesome job lined up, but now I found myself back in the city I grew up and effectively unemployed. Fortunately, we have great family friends who own a ballet. Oh, at that time owned a ballet studio here in the city, one of the only black owned ballet studios in the West Valley, and they brought me on. Whenever we have a two truths and a lie icebreaker at work or in any sort of function, I always include the statement, I worked at a ballet studio. I try to leave it mysterious so folks think I was doing twirls and I was getting my black swan on. But in reality, I was simply working at the front desk and helping parents who wanted to buy equipment and greeting them and it was fun. It was real fun. I did that for maybe about a month to 2 months, and someone reached out to me to let me know of an opening back in Tucson. So again, I was living in Glendale, the city that raised me at that time, back home. And then in Tucson, where I just left months earlier, just graduated from, someone let me know of a job opening at Flowing Wells High School. The job actually was a college, kind of a college career counselor employed by U of A, but stationed at Flowing Wells High School. You were a part of the college advising corps. You were employed by the university, stationed in my case at Flowing Wells, but your purpose was to help students apply for college. Inherently, ideally to the U of A, but just college in general. I was miserable that year. I didn't realize it until my friends told me after the fact. Not because Flowing Wells has an amazing community. All of my Tucson friends or folks in Arizona who have heard of Flowing Wells, you know about the community there, the families, the kids, the staff. It really is a special place. But at that time, I wasn't making any money. I was just a young professional, a rebel without a cause, trying to figure out how to navigate professional spaces. And needless to say, by the end of that year, U of A did not renew my contract. They did not want me back. I'm a pro wrestling fan. I think of this as my Cody Rhodes story, from undeniable to undesirable to undeniable. Cody Rhodes, uh, not seen as a huge talent from WWE, left the company, started his own company in All Elite Wrestling, and all these years later, he is the world champion. He's one of the faces of the company and is truly undeniable. This was my Cody Rhodes moment. I didn't have blonde hair at the time. I did have frosted tips actually many years ago. That photo exists. My mom has it, but that was when I was in third grade. Did not have blonde hair at Flowing Wells High School, but I was embracing my inner Cody Rhodes, trying to become undeniable. Fortunately, by the grace of the universe and other forces at play, I heard of a job opening at Marana High School. So at this point, and I don't know that I shared this with anyone, unless, people talk. So maybe people knew, but I was aware that by the end of the school year at Flowing Wells, by the start of July, I was going to be unemployed unless I found something. Very scary time. Fortunately, one of the administrators at Flowing Wells High School knew the principal at Marana High School and knew that he was looking for an English teacher. So this opportunity completely fell my way. I didn't know where Marana was. I wasn't sure if it was Marana or Marana. Siri kept telling me Marana, but I heard Marana. So this is a community I was not familiar with at all. I Googled it and found that it was about 30 minutes from my apartment at that time on First and Prince. And I was desperate. I think Miranda was a little bit desperate. And so it was kind of the perfect marriage in that regard. I applied for the Miranda opening. I fortunately received an interview. I interviewed with two really great people who I'll never forget for giving me an opportunity. Um, they know who they are. And from there, I was told I had to enroll in a teacher certification program. So I applied to Pima Community College for their teacher cert, their post-bac teacher cert. I began my first year teaching at Marana, so I was busy. I also coached basketball for many years. So the 31-year-old in me looks back at that time and thinks, dog, I don't know how you did that. Late nights, early mornings, like the Marsha Ambrosius song. That was my life for many years. What can I even say about Marana High School? It was really fundamental to me being here. The people that I met, students, colleagues, supervisors, it's responsible for a great deal of my social circle now. I look back at my 5 years at Marana very fondly. And if you've checked out season one, you know that we've had some guests who also have an affiliation with Marana, whether they graduated from there or work there. And it's definitely it's an interesting community in many ways. It is rural, and folks have varying experiences there, which are valid. For me, those first few years were difficult because this is where I felt as though I was back in high school, in the sense that I didn't see a lot of people who look like me, particularly on the staff end of things. It even led me to question if teaching was right for me by the end of year one, by the end of year two. Based on a few interactions I had had, I was just wondering, am I a total imposter, or should I be here? Or maybe stay in teaching but try somewhere else? I stayed. I stayed for year 3 and 4 and 5. And I'm so happy I did, because I made lifelong friends. I had so many people who uplifted me during that time period. I was able to be the lead chaperone for a field trip. One spring break, we took 6 students on an HBCU tour. That meant everything to me. I was able to co-advise our school's inaugural Black Student Union. I learned from veteran teachers. Again, I met folks who are now dear friends. I became an effective teacher. Year one, year two, I was a hot mess. Bless the students I had and the colleagues I worked with. Thank them for putting up with me, because I had a lot to learn, and I was just trying to do right and learn as I went. And I figured it out in time. But had I left before that third year, I don't know what my life would look like now. It certainly would not be as rich with the people who are in it. Marana was an experience teaching freshman and senior English, meeting the Gail Thorbertsons and Brad Winchesters and Mary Romeros and Sheila Nakaratis of the world, and so many students who, this would be an hour-long episode if I went through everybody. And I'm already feeling bad because I know I'm forgetting folks who have been foundational in my journey. It was an experience that I'll never forget. By the end of year 5, I recognized that it was time for something new. I recognized I was aging, and my parents are getting close to retirement. That was my mindset at the time. Although I was only 2 hours away, I had a desire to be closer to them. So by the end of year 5, I transitioned out. I moved back up here to the Valley, back to Glendale. I had a position lined up. I was going to go to Cactus High School and teach freshman English over there, as well as creative writing. So I ended up doing that. It was a little bit tumultuous in that I left mid-year from Cactus, which I've been guilty of shaming colleagues in the past behind their back, of course. Not proud, but let's be the T. For colleagues who left mid-year, teaching is one of those unique professions where you sign a contract, it's not a case where you're on the job for 3 months and then say, oh, I hate it here, I'm going to put in my 2 weeks and peace out. There's this kind of moral oath you sign or you agree to when you become a teacher, that I'm going to ride this thing till the wheels fall. From August through May, you're stuck with me through May. And then maybe we'll reevaluate in the spring, but I have to honor this contract. I have totally been of that mindset. Transitioning to a new school was very difficult, very difficult. New policies, new procedures, new faces, trying to fit in all over again. I left Marana feeling as though I was the man, and I had left a body of work I was proud of, to now starting fresh. I thought I was ready to embrace that, but it was really, really challenging. So I spent a semester at Cactus. Amazing place, amazing kids, amazing colleagues. Spent a semester there. I taught freshman English. I taught creative writing, met amazing people once again. But by the start of the spring semester, I was tapped out. I was waking up at 4:30, 5 a.m. And instead of exercising, which I had developed a pretty consistent pattern of, I was getting up to open up my laptop and do work before school started just to make sure my lesson plans were done and items were uploaded to not Microsoft, not Google Classroom, but Microsoft Teams. I had to learn Teams. And I just didn't feel good about the work I was doing, about my own health. And so I tapped out and I left. And fortunately, I was able to land on my feet at Arizona State University at our Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College over there. I'm so used to giving the full name through my job. So I transitioned over to Teachers College there. I saw an opening for a student recruiter, and I thought to myself, this is new. I want to see what this is about. I don't know how I feel about leaving Cactus. I feel a lot of shame in that, but I think this is the right decision for me. So I left Cactus. I took some time off, and then I started at ASU, completely scared, feeling like that kid who graduated from college all over again. Did I make a rash decision that I'm going to regret? I'm disappointing so many kids and so many colleagues who believed in me. What's next for me? Fortunately, I had friends and family who stuck with me all the way through. That's a consistent pattern in my life. I've been incredibly blessed. And I simply want to see what else was out there in education aside from the four walls of my classroom. That's really all I had known up to this point. I wanted to test the water, so to speak. And working at a university is very nuanced. I've learned it is a great experience. Truly, I've been there over 2.5 years. I'm able to still work with students. I'm still able to visit high schools and talk with students who want to become teachers. I didn't have to transition and go to a job that or a career field that I was unfamiliar with. In fact, I'm very familiar with this work. When I present to classes, I can actually show my pictures at Cactus and Marana and say, I was a teacher. I want to tell you all the blessings it's giving me. And I want you to come join the fight and be an educator, ideally through ASU specifically, but be an educator because what you see on Abbott Elementary, it's so accurate. The highs, the challenges, the impact that you're having, it's so real. ASU's been a blast. I have had the opportunity to go back to school, so I did not really consider applying for a master's. It wasn't an express goal of mine. For a lot of us, that's the struggle is in teaching. What is your career ladder? If you don't necessarily have an aspiration to be an administrator, where do you go? Do you become an instructional coach? Do you aspire to work at the district office? Where do you go from there? I don't particularly have a desire at the moment to be an administrator. Thus, I hadn't really thought about going for a master's. And I certainly didn't have the time or the funds for it while I was in the classroom. However, being at ASU, I was able to apply for a master's program in learning design and technologies, graduated from that program last December, and seeing my parents at the Desert Financial Arena at ASU, seeing them in the audience, receiving messages and hugs and praise from people in my life, friends, family, students, treasured colleagues, them telling me they're proud of me, it just made me melt. I've really been working on embracing those words and really taking the time to absorb them and feel them in my soul and then expressing my gratitude. For a lot of my life, I felt as though maybe I don't deserve this, or maybe I'm just faking people that they just think I'm talented or I belong here when really I don't. It's these mind games we play with ourselves. Sometimes we're our own worst critic. Now, particularly over the last 2.5 years, I've been able to grow. I've been able to heal, and I've been able to develop a better sense of self. and where I fit in within the larger landscape of life, and what do I want out of this life. I'm checking a lot of boxes that have felt great to me that I needed to do. Often people will ask me, where do I see myself now that I've had a taste of higher ed and I have this podcast, I have 4AZ, what's next for you? I believe I'm a teacher at heart, and I want to be in a classroom again at some point. Where that is, when that is, I don't know, but reflecting on the people that I've met over this journey, thinking about the guests we've had on and how much they inspire me, I want to get back to that work at some point. I'll provide this analogy. I was sharing this with a friend the other day. The way I left teaching doesn't sit well with me. LeBron James is my GOAT. Hopefully you won't tune out after me saying this. Bron is my guy. I think about the way I left teaching, the way Bron left Cleveland. You remember back in the day when he left, they made it to the finals, but they got swept by the Spurs. Boston beat up the Cavs, and the worry was LeBron was going to leave his home state, and he did. He went to Miami. Some fans burned his jersey. Just wild stuff. Wild stuff. He went to Miami. He grew. He won rings, but then he went back to Cleveland. One more Cody Rhodes analogy. He finished his story. That's where I believe I'm at. I need to rewrite the end of my story as a teacher at some point, because it's been responsible for so many blessings in my life. And I've had folks now all these years tell me that I meant something to them, or they just had a good experience, or colleagues who have uplifted me and told me I belong here. You're good at what you do. Wow. If I was with you when I was a rookie and you thought I was doing okay and vibes were good, imagine, and you send me or you comment a goat emoji. Like, thank you for your kindness. That's not accurate. I'm not the goat. What if I did become the GOAT? What if I did re-up and recommit myself to this work and say, okay, it's not just going to be about vibes and developing rapport. I'm actually going to double down and become the best at this. That's where my mind is at. I want to prove that emoji to be true. I want that goat emoji and actually feel like, yeah, I am him. I am that guy. And I think I'm getting closer to becoming that person. Education is my chosen career field. When I left Cactus, I wasn't sure. I didn't know what my next steps were going to be. I didn't know if this was my time to completely change my career field. But having the chance to heal and reflect and network over these past 2.5 years, I now know education is for me. This leads us to the creation of 4AZ. Wow, we did it. We're nearing the end of season 1. I feel so at peace. I feel so much excitement about what we've done and what we have yet to do. I am so thankful for the guests we've had on, and for all of you listening or watching this right now. Wow. We're creating this for us, for Arizona. We're creating this for kids like me who just needed to see a face in front of the room to just spark that idea, spark teaching education as being even a possibility, to tell us we are smart enough, we do belong here, we do have the talents to become a teacher. I can't wait for what's to come. We've had a great season. We're not done at all. That leads me to my updates. Next week, it's our season finale. Our guest will be Dr. Erica McDowell. She's an educator and co-CEO of the Black Wildflowers Fund. This is an episode you won't want to miss. After next week's finale, we'll be taking some time off. However, I'm proud to announce that we will be back for season 2. Season 2 will be different now. Can I fill you in on a secret? Our focus for season 2 will be on newsmakers and hot topics. Stay tuned. Until then, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this special episode, and I'll see you next week.